This is the audio book of Jimmy the Big Hat, copyright 2022 by Andy Logan. All rights reserved. Publisher Helios and Sons, S-U-N-S. Illustrated by Alison Logan. Foreword by Alec Logan. We'll read Jimmy the Big Hat in the voice of Vito Maglione, who tells the story. First, the foreword. Hello, I'm Alec Logan, the son of the author. I was asked to write the foreword, so I shall do so now. Okay, I was pretty much there the whole time with Jimmy the Big Hat. I saw the idea spring to life one day. See, we'd go to this bagel shop, Portland Brew, almost every morning. My dad and I'd eat breakfast there, and I'd ask him to make up stories. Now, even before Jimmy the Big Hat, my dad would talk about Theo the dinosaur and his collection of friends, Screen Time Charlie, who's never off of his iPad, Caliente, the angry chihuahua. These he would improvise. One morning I was expecting another Theo chapter when my dad broke into a mob voice. He started talking about this crook, Jimmy the Big Hat. He made it up on the spot and started talking about this gangster always wearing large hats. I like dark humor, so I started laughing immediately. The next morning I wanted more of Jimmy, so I asked him to continue. Make me laugh. Well, when he came out with the explosion and the can landing in the kid's birthday cake, I choked on my food. Not that hard, I said. He began writing these stories down. Over several months, the story you now have in your hands was created. I hope you folks enjoy this book as much as I do. It's a hell of an idea. Alec Logan, age 12. My name is Vito. I'm going to tell you about my boss. His name is James Joseph Caravaggio, but everybody calls him Jimmy the Big Hat because he wears big hats all the time. Always with the hats. One time he wore a sombrero to a funeral. Sounds funny to you? Nobody laughs at Jimmy the Big Hat. Nobody. Sombrero had the tassels and everything. Not even a snicker. You never see Jimmy without a hat. Now at first, Jimmy didn't wear hats. When he was first getting into the business, he worked for a guy named Pretty Lucky Maloney. They called him Pretty Lucky because most of the time bad things didn't happen to him. He'd be on a good streak, then he'd get his hand blown off by a mailbox bomb, things like that. Maloney was a real tough guy, a wise guy, and one time, after Jimmy pulled off a job for him, Maloney called him in. He said, Jimmy, I'm grateful. You do good work. But your head looks like a fucking watermelon. Get a hat. Get a big hat, or you don't work for me. So Jimmy did. He went real big. It became his thing. And then when he whacked Joey McCann, things started to fall into place for Jimmy. Joey McCann, he was asking for it. Taunting Jimmy, making fun of his hats, skimming Jimmy's profits. Like Jimmy wasn't going to find out someone was stealing from him. Joey was half Italian, half Irish, so he liked to eat at this Italian-Irish restaurant called O'Gallo's. They combined the food in interesting ways. Joey was sitting by himself, eating the usual, bangers and ravioli, when Jimmy walked in and fired 6 bullets into his trachea. Why all 6 in the throat? No clue. Have to ask Jimmy. It worked. It's right around this time that Pretty Lucky Maloney ran out of luck. Jimmy now became the boss, and he brought me in to work for him, help him clean up his books, things like that. Also around this time, Jimmy got a racehorse, beautiful, named a Racketeer. Jimmy thought it had a nice ring to it. The Racketeer was fast. That horse loved to race. So one day at the tracks, Jimmy put down a lot of money on his horse. It was a slam dunk. Jimmy called the other horses to race a glue factory on account of they make glue out of horses, or so I hear, and that's all the others were good for. But as it turned out, Skinny Bartolini didn't like Jimmy too much. He also had his own horse, Concrete Shoes, and he didn't like it being called glue, so he gave Racketeer a little tranquilizer before the race. And they're off. In the lead is Racketeer, followed by Sleeping with the Fishes, Capiche, pushing up daisies and trailing his Concrete Shoes. Here comes Capiche on the outside. Racketeer seems to be losing ground. On the inside, it's Concrete Shoes. Concrete Shoes and Capiche, followed by Pushing Up Daisies and Sleeping with the Fishes. Racketeer is fading fast. Wait! Racketeer is lying down in the middle of the track. The jockey is pinned under him. It's concrete shoes by a length. Anyway, I thought horses slept standing up, but not this horse. It took him 2 hours to get the jockey out. He was okay, except for the leg, you know. So Skinny Bartolini in concrete shoes won the race, but he wasn't going to enjoy the money too long. Skinny turned up a week later floating on the Hudson in 12 separate whiskey barrels. Jimmy has a soft spot, too. Sure, he whacks a few people, but he likes little dogs. Little yippy dogs. And the smaller they are and the more obnoxious they are, the more Jimmy likes them. They're always coming back from the groomer with little bows on them and shit. You don't like my dogs? Jimmy always says. Then shut the hell up and get a golden retriever. And he laughs like he said something really funny, but he hasn't. Teasing Jimmy is not a good idea. Jimmy the Big Hat does not like to be teased. If you say anything about his hats, he gets a little smile, then he breaks your kneecaps. Which puts me in an awkward situation. I'm his right-hand man, his confidant. When he asks me about a hat he's wearing, I mean if he looks, not his best, I need to break it to him easy. Like this one time, we were at a diner, and Jimmy had this new hat, gold and pointy and very tall. So Vito, I have a new hat. I see that, Jimmy. That hat is definitely new. You have not told me what you think of it. Well, Jimmy, it's, no, I do not know. It's a little gold. A little gold? I look like the fucking Pope? Some flunky from the Vatican? No, Jimmy, it's not like that. I just like the 10-gallon fedora a little better, that's all. Vito, you're lucky I like you. I don't let nobody else talk to me like that. Now, this is a great fucking hat. Yeah, sure, Jimmy, yeah, I see it now. See, I always gotta do a little dance with Jimmy. Sometimes his big hats could cause a little trouble. Like this one time, we were at a baseball game, and Jimmy had on a gigantic hat. This thing must have weighed 25 pounds, okay? The hat was so big, nobody in the seats behind us could see the game. They couldn't even see the field. Sure enough, guy behind us taps Jimmy on the shoulder and says something like, excuse me, sir, I can't see. At which point, Jimmy turns around and points a gun at the guy's forehead. Do we have a problem? Guy backs off right away. No problem at all. All good. Enjoy the game. Guy was too scared to move, so he sat there listening to the game on his transistor radio. He had one of those earphones in, so Jimmy couldn't hear it. Jimmy's like that. He has an effect on people. You know Jimmy like little dogs, right? I mentioned this before. Well, there's an interesting story involving the pet shop where Jimmy bought the dogs. Stop me if I told you this. You see, the people who owned the pet store had to move on account of the landlord doubling their rent. The store was in Jimmy's domain, so Jimmy made sure the landlord got shaken up a little. Well, a lot, but at that point it was too late, and the Weisenbergs, that's the name of the pet store owners, had to move to a different part of town, Mo Lutz's territory. The Weisenbergs had barely settled in when Mo Lutz made his grand entrance. You got a nice place here. Shame if anything happened to it. Then Mo hit him up for protection money. Give Mo such and such and he doesn't trash the place. So Milt Weisenberg calls Jimmy about it. He's all upset. Jimmy goes through the fucking roof. And who does he vent to? Me, Vito. You hear that? That son of a bitch Lutz is going after the Weisenbergs? They sold me my first Lhasa Apso. And this shit about you got a nice place here, be a shame if anything happened to it? That's my line. I say that. Nobody else says that. Vito, can you trademark a threat? Find out. Yeah, sure, Jimmy. I know a guy at the copyright office. I'll look into it. Jimmy was hot. Milt Weisenberg does not pay protection money to Mo Lutz. He's a humble, hard-working guy with a family. He pays protection money to me. I don't think I've ever seen Jimmy that mad before. I was pretty sure Mo Lutz was going to be taking a dirt nap real soon, and I was not wrong. Mo lived in Sands Point. Real nice neighborhood. He drove a 57 Buick Roadmaster, baby blue with a white top. His pride and joy, to coin a phrase. Every time he walked up to the car, he'd sing this Buick jingle to himself. It was always on the radio at that time. Wouldn't you really rather have a Buick? A Buick? A Buick? You'd always know it was Mo about to drive because he'd sing that stupid fucking song. Well, Jimmy the Big Hat loaded up that car real good. I think he overdid it, because when Mo turned the key, the car exploded so bad it sent up a mushroom cloud you could see in Jersey. Some poor kid was having a 6th birthday party. Kids were all sitting outside, tablecloths, party hats, those things you blow into where they shoot out and go back in, whatever the fuck you call those things. And little Petey was about to blow out the candles when a hand landed in his cake. I heard he never had another birthday party. It freaked him out. When Jimmy heard about the kid, he bought Petey 200 shares in the Toucan Casino in Carson City. Never mind the place was losing $10,000 a night at the time. Jimmy can be generous to a fault. I remember Jimmy would joke about Mo Lutz. Hey, Vito, you hear about the Mo thing? He's all over the neighborhood. Get it? Between you and me, Jimmy's a better mobster than he is a comedian. Now, it's about this point that the feds were starting to close in on Jimmy. We thought it'd be a good idea for him to get away for a while, use an alias, pretend to be someone else. Jimmy picked Santa Barbara, very nice beach town in Southern California, beautiful, and pretty much mob-free. He decided to lay low as a camp counselor. Jimmy changed his name to Bryce and started wearing regular hats. Truth be told, he didn't look too authentic. Whatever a Bryce looks like, it ain't Jimmy. Jimmy was 47, some rolls around the middle, gray coming through. The rest of the counselors were like 20. He did his best to fake it, the polo shirt, the white shorts, the forced smile on his face. Jimmy wasn't too good at changing his persona, however, surprising as that may sound. So on the first day of summer camp, a little girl walks up to him and says, "You have a big head." And Jimmy says, "Shut your pie hole, you little shit." Every morning they'd gather around for what they called campfire. Only there was no camp and no fire. They were at Buena Vista Elementary School. And he'd sing these dumb songs and do cheers and shit that get stuck in your head all day. And Jimmy, Bryce, would stand in the back with his arms folded and say things like, "Jesus," under his breath. There was this one counselor, Colleen, who really got on Jimmy's last nerve. She had too much energy, she was real bubbly and perky, and there's the one thing that Jimmy cannot stand, it's perky. At least in most cases. Colleen talked to the kids like they were 3 years old, real wide-eyed. One day she's in front of the group playing this game called Guess What I Am, which particularly irked Jimmy. Colleen did something like, "I've got a blue head, large wings, and I like to fly around the garden." And Colleen started flapping her arms and running around in a circle. Something just snapped in Jimmy. It wasn't obvious to anybody at the time, just another muttering under his breath. Only this time he said, "That's it." It became increasingly apparent that Bryce was not your ordinary camp counselor. And one day, when they were out on a field trip, the head counselor had a little talk with Jimmy. "Bryce, the other groups are making ice cream. And you're teaching your kids how to use a garrote. It's a life skill. Where's Colleen?" "Where's Colleen? What do you mean, where's Colleen?" The counselor said it again. "Bryce, where is Colleen?" So Jimmy points to the middle of the lake, says nothing. The head counselor stares at Jimmy. Jimmy says, "Don't worry about it." Clearly, Jimmy's tenure as camp counselor had come to an abrupt halt. Before the police got wind of the goings-on at Camp Sesquahepawachi, Jimmy was on a plane to LaGuardia. Suffice it to say, Jimmy stayed on the down low for a while to later emerge more Jimmy the Big Hat than ever. But these are stories for a later time. We'll talk again real soon. Cheers, Vito. As of this writing, Vito Maglione is now living in the Federal Witness Protection Program under an assumed and unabashedly incongruous name.